3, 2, 1, go. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night. This is the third time I've done this commentary because I'm just completely incapable of getting something I'm happy with. So if I can't get it on this tape, this is the tape that's going up anyway. So this is a Metroidvania game from the man who basically invented Metroidvania as a thing. He is Koji Igarashi, I believe that's his name anyway, and he more or less said, hey, I don't have access to the Castlevania license anymore, so do you want me to just make a new IP and do what I do best? And apparently everyone agreed. It's one of the most popular Kickstarters ever, and the game's finally out, so we get to take a look at it. So the game's got some pretty basic stuff going on. You've got controls, including controller stuff. As of this build, the game does not actually support a PS4 controller, so you'll need to use an Xbox pad, but when I pulled out my Xbox pad it worked fine. Volume sliders are fine, although it starts out a little high. There's a fair few graphics settings, and the game does run on pretty low-end machines. I managed to get this working on my GPD Win 2 at an almost solid 60, but I had to turn everything all the way down and play the game in 360p. And there was some weird issues with some of the screens and some of the UI elements just not working properly at that resolution. And there's some other options as well, including the voice language, which you can change to Japanese if you like. That's a good thing, but at the same time, the English voice dub of this game is actually pretty good, and you'll be able to hear some of it in this video. So we're just going to resume from my save data. Again, I'm not playing this live. This is post-commentary. I thought the footage turned out okay, so I figured I'd just let it go while I talked about the game. So in case you've never played any of these games before, the general basis is that you go into the world. It's a side-scrolling platformer with combat and RPG elements. You go around, beat the crap out of monsters, find items, upgrade your stats, and you unlock new abilities by beating bosses and finding them in the world, which will let you explore even more of the map. In this case, it's a giant-ass castle, because of course it is. It's a bloody Metroidvania game. It almost isn't ever not a castle, and considering that it's bloody Iga himself behind this project, yeah, it's going to be a castle. So there's a bunch of things that this game does that are pretty familiar. The combat and platforming, for example, is extremely familiar. It feels entirely on point. If you've played any one of Iga's games before, this game is 110% on point. The platforming feels absolutely on par with something like Symphony, and the combat as well, even though it's a little bit different considering some of the abilities that you've got in this game. But yeah, if you are even remotely familiar with the Castlevania Metroidvania era ones, yeah, this will absolutely feel familiar. Just right down to the physics of the jumps and all that. It's all so familiar. It almost feels like he's ripping himself off. It's that close. But thankfully, that's kind of what people wanted, because you have to remember, this is literally him going to people and saying, hey, if you want me to make the game that I was known for, then support my Kickstarter. And that's pretty much exactly what he did. And that's what we should all be happy about. So yeah, so he has pretty much got it on pat, but let's take the time to explore some of the game mechanics more in depth. I do menu diving in this video just later on, but again, I'm not really working in sync with the video here. So the game's main set of magical abilities are conferred via shards, and shards are earned by beating the crap out of monsters as much as humanly possible. Eventually, one of them will drop a shard, and there are multiple different kinds of shards. There is your physical attack, which is on the Y button. There's your ranged attack, which is on the right trigger. There's your manipulation attack, which is on the right bumper, and in this case, it lets me move objects of certain kinds. There is also a familiar, which is the Silver Knight that's floating around me for the entirety of this video, and he's quite useful. And there's also a passive that you can get. So, for example, increasing a certain stat, or increasing a... what's the word I'm looking for? Increasing a certain stat, or increasing your effectiveness with a certain kind of weapon. You do have a weapon, of course, and you can swing away with the X button. You can also duck and jump in order to do that. And yes, you can still throw out a swing in the air, lean, and immediately send out another swing, because this game does let you do that, just like all the old games. As I said, they've got the physics and just the general feel of it down to a T. So it absolutely feels the part. You do also have some other special abilities, like the ability to manipulate certain objects by using the right analog stick. You can also aim your ranged attack with the right analog stick, which is very useful. And you also have your backstep, which again feels entirely on point. You also have a shortcut ability, which allows you to set certain sets of weapons and shards. So if you want to go for like a short range and a long range profile, you can do that. I don't really do that in this video, I just stick with the one set, but if you want to do it, it's there. You do also have, what's the word I'm looking for? You do also have some special attacks that you can unlock for each individual kind of weapon. There's actually a lot of individual kinds of weapons. They're all split into certain subcategories like spears and there's guns in this one too. I think you get a blunderbuss early on. Yeah, you get swords, spears, great swords, guns, boots, stuff like that. But then they're also split into types that have their own unique special attacks, which are put in like a fighting game input. And it actually adds a lot of depth to the combat overall, because you got to think about it. Not only do you have like your backstep and your jump and all that for your evasion, but you've got a regular weapon attack, a special weapon attack, a short range magic attack, a long range magic attack, and a bloody manipulation magic attack. It's also helped out by the fact that when you defeat an enemy, you have a chance of getting a shard, but you also have a chance of getting another shard that you already have, which is a neat idea because extra shards actually make your attacks more powerful. So if you like an attack in particular, it's worth your time to go and farm certain monsters because more shards equals more power for that kind of attack. You can also sell shards, so if you get a lot of shards for something that you don't like, you can sell it for free gold. It's really useful, actually. I really like this concept. It slipstreams everything into a really easy to understand system, and I do appreciate it quite thoroughly because it means that you just get to build yourself the way you want with your own attacks and your own accessories as well, because of course this game does have the old-fashioned RPG system with the stats and all that. And there are also some really funny accessories, like for example, considering that we're on a voice acting scene now, you're going to wonder why Miriam's voice is so high. It's because I'm literally using an accessory that actually changes her voice. You do also get some accessories and stuff showing up here, like the silly glasses, the voice changer, and the pirate hat, although I don't think your outfit changes. There are a bunch of dudes hanging around as well. Things like quest counters, alchemy for putting together certain amounts of materials into actual usable items. There's a farm. There's a bunch of people who give you side quests, like bring back certain items, kill a certain amount of dudes, yada 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 yada. They're all back at the hub, and you'll get to see them a bit later. Then you've got people like this guy, who'll let you rent out a book so that you can just change whatever stats you feel you're lacking in. I always take luck, because in this game, in this sort of game at least, luck is always incredibly useful, but I've also kind of maximized, actually, my stats are actually pretty well balanced, more or less, and it means that my MP actually recharges really fast, which is something that I really appreciate in this game, because you get a lot of MP if you're going around and making sure that you're finding at least some of the secrets and just general mana ups they're leaving around, which means that you can just throw out MP attacks mostly on a whim, which I really appreciate. There's candles everywhere that'll restore your MP as soon as you use it, more or less, so you can just use as much as you damn well please, in my personal opinion, and I like that. It means that you don't have to worry too much about using magical spells. The castle is exactly what you would think. There's save areas all over the place that restore your health and let you save. There's portals that'll take you across the map. There's bookcases everywhere, they'll let you read journals, and of course every room is filled with enemies. There's tons of different unique kinds of enemies, and there's a couple that make me laugh every time, like there's a Shovel Knight enemy. Yes, really, I didn't even know this was going to be a thing, so I was just kind of surprised when I found him. And there's another enemy that has a death cry that sounds exactly like a lengthened version of the hurt sound from Minecraft. I don't know what makes me think of this. Unfortunately, I don't think we see it in this video, but there you go. There are tons of different kinds of weapons, and of course there are tons of different kinds of accessories as well to let you build your character the way you so well please, which I appreciate. And what else is there to talk about in the way of gameplay mechanics? I mean, there are a couple of nice things going on. Like I said before, you do change your physical appearance with certain accessories, which is nice. What else do I have to say about it, really? I'm not entirely sure. I guess we'll go on to the things like boss combat and all that. All the bosses are exactly as you'd expect. Some of them are a bit easy, and there's a reason for that, which we'll get into shortly, but they're still enjoyable. I haven't fought a boss in this game that I haven't liked. You'll be seeing 2 of them in this video. Some of them are just neat like this one, and some of them are just big spectacles like the one at the end of this video. And they're still fun. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. Nothing particularly amazing, but that's not what these bosses are meant to do. They're meant to be more challenging than spectacle, and I appreciate that quite a bit. I actually managed to get through this boss without losing more than like a quarter of my health bar, which, you know, that's actually really good for me, so there you go. Considering that this footage was actually the first time I fought him, so, you know, whatever. So, let's talk about the graphical style. The game looks great. The first trailers they were putting out for it actually had me a little bit worried because the game kind of looked lackluster. But now that the full game is out, they've done that big graphical overhaul and all that. The game looks really, really nice in motion. They've done a great job in making the game just look really nice. And I've got basically no problem with it whatsoever. It just looks really good. Even on the lowest settings, it does a really good job of looking nice. And the actual performance of the port is okay as well. As I said, I tried to run this on my GPD Win 2, and I did run into a couple of issues. One mainly where if your performance goes down too far, Miriam, who is the main character's voice acting, will start crackling like crazy for some reason. And the general performance of the game on lower end machines might be a bit of a problem. But at the same time, it still runs pretty well on anything that isn't a potato, so there you go. I have everything cranked up to cinematic for this video, and it looks and runs absolutely fine, although again, the rig that I'm recording this on is an 8700K and an RTX 2080, so if it didn't run properly on this configuration, I'd be a little bit concerned. The sound design as well is absolutely fine too. I got no problem with the overall quality of the music and sound effects. Nothing I'd particularly point out as being noteworthy, but at the same time, if I'm generally not hating it, I'm generally liking it, so I'll give it a pass. It sounds the part. What really sounds the part, though, and this actually kind of surprised me, is the game's voice acting. They did a really good job with the voice acting for the English cast. Even David Hayter, who sounds just like Solid Snake, because, you know, it's David Hayter, you'd expect nothing less, you'd want nothing less. And even David Hayter sounds the part. Like, everybody has got this sort of theme going on with their voices. Like, everyone sounds like they could be from this era. And it works fine for me. The game's story takes place in, like, the 1800s, I think. So, yeah, everybody sounds on point without going too far over the top. And I actually really appreciate it. And there are a couple of characters like the barber who I really like. You get to see him in this video, so yeah, they've actually done a really good job with the English voice acting. It's not something I immediately swapped out for the Japanese version, so there you go. I'm just feeling around here. I've got no idea what I'm bloody doing. But yeah, what else is there to say? The presentation is really well done. It's basically what you would hope for. It looks really nice. It doesn't feel like we've lost anything going back to the two-dimensional side of things, and I really appreciate that. So there you go. The castle itself is absolutely full of secrets. There's tons of breakable walls everywhere, and God forbid I know that I found a couple entirely by accident, and I found a couple entirely on purpose. I swung at a wall going, there's got to be a secret there, and there absolutely was. So, yeah, just, yeah, it all comes together really well. The game itself is really fun to play. There's a lot of stuff to do. There is the art and just general presentation come together really well. There's a couple of things that I could like nitpick about, like having to talk to this lady every single time I want to get a new quest and all that, but well, that's just something you kind of have to do with these games, so whatever. It's a nitpick, nothing else. You're about to see everything that can be done in the hub. I take the time to at least let you see all the menus and stuff. There's plenty of stuff to do, craft, buy, sell, etc, etc, etc. You get hints about where you need to go, but generally you just need to try and find your way through stuff that you haven't been through yet. There's not that much in the way of content, notably, at the moment. The only thing that's in the game right now is the single-player main story, with 3 difficulty levels, 2 of which are actually locked immediately when you start. So you can only play through the game on normal, and normal is actually kind of easy. I've died a few times, admittedly, but that's mainly because I've been learning boss patterns and stuff like that, right? So I've basically just been going right through just fine. And I imagine that the game will be a lot harder on the higher difficulties, but yeah, you don't get access to that immediately. There's also a bunch of stuff that you don't get access to immediately, like the extra modes. They've promised things like boss rushes, higher difficulties, online and local co-op, stuff like that just isn't in the game yet, because the game, well, they promised all that on the Kickstarter, and they say that they are going to do all of that stuff with DLC updates that will be free throughout an entire year, which is a little bit much, but at the same time, I guess if you wanted to wait for all that content to show up, you could. With that said, though, apparently this story mode lasts something like 10 hours. Might be a little short, but then again, you've got replay value and the DLC coming down the line. Considering the game's Steam rating at the time I'm recording this video, it seems like that they're going to be doing okay. And all that free stuff like the roguelike mode, the extra difficulties, and all the extra stuff, it's all going to add to the value to the game over time, so if you want to just wait it out, you're more than welcome to, but I would fully recommend you buy Bloodstained if you have even the slightest interest in these sorts of games. It's basically just him coming to you and saying, hey, I did that thing that I'm well known for, here you go. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. It's a really good example of the Metroidvania genre. It's well polished, well put together, it feels exactly like its namesake, and I have absolutely no problem with that. He did a great job putting it together, and thankfully this looks like one of those Kickstarters that wasn't a complete waste of everyone's time and money. Looking at you, Starlight Inception. It's a shame it couldn't come out on Vita, but, well, I'm guessing that's why the game looks as good as it does, because I imagine the old look was influenced by the fact that they needed to put it out on the Vita, but now that they didn't, they were able to give it a bit of an overhaul, and it looks great, so you win some, you lose some, I suppose. I don't really have much else to say about the game. There are probably a couple of things that I'm forgetting because I'm doing this entirely off the top of my head, but yeah, frankly, my overall opinion doesn't really change that much. The game itself is really good. If you are even remotely interested in Metroidvanias, this is worth your time. This is absolutely worth your time. If you like platforming combat with a little bit of challenge, you'd probably want to be interested in this one as well. And I just, yeah, it's really good. If you like this sort of thing, go buy it immediately, because this is well worth supporting. Yeah, I'm done. This has been Blue Maxima. I'm going to turn the audio up on the rest of the video so you can hear it and all that, but unfortunately I don't think we're going to get that much voice acting after this point. That's a shame. We've been talking for nearly 20 minutes. I'll see you all next time.
Oh, then I'd better keep my distance.